Okay, county lines is effectively a business plan. It's a structure by which basically drugs, and by that we're talking about the controlled drugs, the illegal drugs from class C to class A, cannabis, class B, crack, cocaine, heroin, are shipped out of large city areas into urban, suburban, rural areas and supplied via networks of exploited children, predominantly. The county line itself that's referenced is a telephone number. It's a method of contacting somebody to say, or to be contacted by somebody who says that drugs are available, or to contact them and ask them if they're operating, if they're on. And then basically to make an arrangement to meet up somewhere so that a supply can be arranged and a delivery and an exchange of drugs for cash. And a lot of the time, in the vast majority of circumstances, in order to make this network keep running, it's built on the criminal seduction of young people, young as 12, 13, 14 years old, who are persuaded to carry from A to B, to supply, and to keep these drugs moving. It's a national problem that every region of the UK is having to confront.
And it goes without saying, this is not just criminal, very, very dangerous.
Oh, massively. I mean, it presents harmful circumstances on so many levels. It's a huge safeguarding concern for a generation of children. People are often mistaken that this is all about, children who are less well off, who are disadvantaged and those kind of things. And yes, vulnerable, disadvantaged, disenfranchised children will be targeted, but there are vulnerable, disenfranchised children at all tiers of society, coming from all walks of life and backgrounds. And the object of the county lines business model is to infiltrate every aspect of community. That would include public schools, that would include your academy structures, it would include being available to supply drugs in parks and garden green spaces. And basically, it's about ensuring that there is a constant availability of drugs in the way that you might think that now takeaway food is available at all hours, all the time, through numerous different food providers servicing through apps. It's literally a business model that is seeking to preserve revenue streams, cash flow, delivery, logistics. It's really that hard-nosed. And unfortunately, it's a completely unregulated environment. So it's brutal. And it involves violence, it involves drug addiction, it involves debt bondage and modern-day slavery. And in a number of circumstances, it can also include things like child sexual exploitation as well.
And what's the scale of this in Cambridgeshire?
Cambridgeshire is absolutely no different to anywhere else. And one of the things that Cambridgeshire often struggles with is actually representing itself on a national level as a county that has such problems, because people will perceive Cambridgeshire to be a problem-free area, a comfortable middle-class area. When people say Cambridgeshire, they think of punting on the Cam and they think King's College and Trinity. And while we are incredibly lucky to have things like Ely Cathedral and all of these rich cultural things around us, actually, do you know what? We've also got a great deal of inequality that we've got to tackle. And in fact, Cambridgeshire is, I understand, one of, if not the most unequal county in the country. And Cambridge is a very divided city as a consequence of that. That just represents opportunity. That represents opportunity for crime, and it creates opportunities for people who want to earn the promise of easy money, and that kind of thing from an early age. And as such, we have to understand that there are no areas within this county that we could take for granted as being not affected by county lines.
And when you go to schools and you talk to young people about this, what's your message? What do you say to them, tell them to do?
Well, I am very keen to engage and listen to them first and foremost. And I think that that's a really important step. actually, is listening to their life experiences and listening and understanding the things that would draw them towards this kind of behavior and this type of activity, because it's in doing that that we can untie some of the things and work back through the things that attract them in and steer them towards diversionary activities. The message that I've got, that I bring into PSHE sessions, to assemblies, to tutor and form groups, to one-to-one mentoring, is to understand how harmful, how menacing, and how coercive the world is if you get drawn into circles of being part of a drug supply chain. Young people are used by county lines, organised crime groups as a human shield to take responsibility for and to take the rap for the criminal wrongdoings of people who are making the big money out of this kind of thing. They are there to be coerced. They are there to be burnt out and to be used. I've spoken to and known numerous young people who've had to be available at all hours of the day and night, the early hours of the morning, in order to go out and supply things like cocaine and heroin to Class A drug dependent people who want X, Y, and Z straight away. Then on top of that, they have the huge responsibility of making sure that all of the money and every single penny of it goes where it needs to go subsequently. It is a real nightmare to get wrapped up in, and the consequences for being perceived to not toe the line and not do what is required of you once you are drawn into that kind of a situation are really horrific and dehumanizing. We're talking about treatment and behavior of children that is dehumanizing. And that is on another level of despicable criminal misconduct. So I'm pretty candid. While I'm sensitive to the learning spectrum and the people that I'm speaking in front of and who I sit down and talk with, but we can get down to it and really talk about the real details, because what is offered up front by county lines is a world of designer clothing and easy money and being popular and parties and not having to listen to those boring teachers. And we really have to attack and be on the front foot around all of that to make sure that our young people can make informed choices, because young people, when they're given the right amount of information, they will make informed choices.
So you have seen, obviously, at first hand when you're working the police, how much this can destroy young people, just take away their futures.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. 100%. Young men and young women as well. We're talking about teenage boys and teenage girls who have at some stage had aspirations, they've had their own personal interests, they've had vibrant family lives and lots of friends and things like that, becoming disenfranchised from people that they love, families feeling bereaved at losing their children, having their children identified by new names, very much a process of exchanging their identity for something else, adopting language and accents that seem foreign and alien to the people who are around them, and becoming embroiled with people who are unknown to the family members, to mum and dad, to their friends, and those kind of things, going missing for periods of time and losing every form of motivation and becoming inaccessible. Once a child, a young person, is drawn into that world, it is hugely difficult to extract them and to pull them back out of it. It's very difficult. It is a prolonged process, and it is very often not a successful one until they get to a certain stage in their own life when they recognize what they've been through. It's a traumatic process that involves a lot of early life trauma, and it leaves young people feeling shattered and absolutely cast aside when eventually it does all come crashing down. And unfortunately, you do get to see this. And I don't think there's anything quite as heartbreaking as seeing a talented, gifted, wonderful young person go through those kind of things.
And are you optimistic about the future, or is this getting worse?
I think that there needs to be a very concerted strategy that comes all the way down from, central government all the way down. There needs to be more joined up thinking on this on a national basis. There needs to be more consistency in the way that we approach the problem. I think that there needs to be a review of national drug strategy and legislation. We're working with legislation from the 70s, which never contemplated the problems that we're confronting at the moment. We've got a classification system which says that, for example, cannabis is a Class B drug. Well, the damaging nature of cannabis is variable depending on what its THC content is, but that has very little bearing on actually how it's classified and how it's looked at and what we do about it. There needs to be more mental health support. There needs to be more support for young people and children with substance misuse issues and addiction issues. That's out there and we have to confront that too. And it's part of the process of helping to rehabilitate. So actually, there's a lot of work to be done here. And, at the moment, I don't think the investment and the concerted effort and the focus and the priority is on it right now. And it's very easy for us to get distracted from this agenda because there are so many things happening that we're going through at the moment. But that only makes the most vulnerable more vulnerable.
If somebody's listening to this, either as an individual, as a parent, or they're involved with an organisation, a youth organisation or a school, and they want to raise awareness about this and do something about it, what can they do?
I would invite them to get in contact with me. If they visit my website, it's www.inclusive-development.co.uk. My contact details are on there. They can email me and I can either signpost them to some great resources, and I'll be happy to do that. I've always got time to help people with that. Or if they want to work with me and they'd like me to help them specifically, and they'd like to talk to me on the phone, or they want to set up a video meeting or something like that, let's do it. I've got 2 books that I've written very recently that are resources. One is a resource for young people, which is the County Lines A Young Person's Guide, and that's designed to be accessible to readers from 12 to 16 years and hopefully address a number of different questions that I get asked all the time when I'm working with young people. And the other book is the Beating County Lines and Other Things to Do Before Lunch, which is a book that's designed for partners and for parents and for a more adult and professional approach to how do we solve these problems, because unfortunately, and this is the reason why I wrote that particular book and entitled it the way that it is, this has become one of those things that's on the to-do list and we need to get a grip of it collectively. So that book is also available, and again, if anybody wishes to have a look at either of those titles, they can find them both on my website, which should be wonderful.